Thanks for stopping by No Hippie Barbecue. This is Lyle, and if there's one thing I like, it's some good corn chowder. This is one of these recipes that I take to a lot of potlucks and things like that. And I don't really have a specific recipe for it, although I will leave the approximate amounts and ingredients in the description below. Now this is a recipe that I've done a number of different ways. I've used bacon and shrimp, just shrimp, meatless. No matter how you cook this is something that most people are going to enjoy. Anyway, today we are going to be going with a bacon corn chowder. We're going to be pumping it up with a little bit of Old Bay seasoning, as well as a few other ingredients. Come on in and take a look at what those other ingredients are. Here's the ingredients I'm going with, and this is a chowder. This is something that you can kind of make your own, so use whatever kind of vegetables you like. Typically I would be using corn on the cob, and I would strip that away with a knife. 2 benefits to doing that technique is some of the cornstarch from the corn actually will thicken up the recipe a little bit, so I'm probably going to add a little bit of flour to this, which I don't have on this table right now. So we have some white corn. I'm going with some red pepper flakes, some jalapenos, so this is going to be pretty spicy, so if you don't like spicy food you can eliminate that. We have some fresh cracked black pepper, some better than bouillon or any kind of chicken base that you like, some Old Bay seasoning, green onions, and I am reserving some of those green onion tops for later on just as a little bit of garnish, some celery, onions, and if these look a little bit kind of weird, I did have these frozen from a different recipe, so perfect recipe to use leftover ingredients in. We have potatoes that are diced, and we have our bacon. We're also going to be using some heavy whipping cream and some milk. Like I said, I am going to touch this up with a little bit of flour to help and thicken it up. Let's get on to the next step. Our first step is going to be to go ahead and cook this bacon until it becomes somewhat crispy. Now that our bacon's cooked about 3/4 of the way through, we're going to go ahead and add our onions, our celery, and our jalapenos. We're just going to go ahead and cook this until the vegetables start getting a little softened up. Now that our vegetables are softened up, we're going to go ahead and add our pepper, our red pepper, our Old Bay. Stir that in. And we will be tasting down the road, adding anything that we need to at that time. Now we're going to go ahead and add our flour. We're going to stir this in and let it cook for about a minute. Now that that's cooked down a minute, we're going to go ahead and add our potatoes, our corn, and I'm going to throw in a dollop of this chicken bouillon. And this is just a faster way of getting the chicken flavor in it without actually stirring it into some water, because it's going to disperse through there anyway. Alright, got that. Let's go with our green onions. All of our heavy cream. And now we're going to just go ahead and add enough milk to cover this by about an inch, inch and a half. Let's take a look at this, stir it up right quick. And I can just tell by looking at this from making it a few times, we are going to go ahead and hit it with a little bit more of this Old Bay. I can just tell that it doesn't have enough in it just by the color. And I'm going to go ahead and let this simmer for a good hour, hour and a half, so those potatoes can get softened up and let all these flavors come together. Now that this has had a chance to simmer for about an hour and a half, you can see that it's a lot thicker than it was. We are good to go. I'm going to go ahead and plate this up. Go ahead and taste it and see what we think. Now I'm going to tell you, this taste test right here is a mere formality. This is something that I cook all the time, so I know exactly how good this is. Sometimes it does change up a little bit, so you know, let's get in. Like I said, this is awesome. Now some of the changes I make, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes I'll add some shrimp to this. Sometimes I'll even add like some white wine, things like that. Sometimes I won't add the potatoes. So this kind of changes up all the time, but same basic concept. One of the things I will tell you is that Old Bay does come through in this, so definitely if you have some Old Bay, rock some of that out. If you don't, whatever kind of seasoning you like. Anyway, I'd like to thank you guys for stopping by No Hippie Barbecue. I do appreciate it. Comment, subscribe, and I'm out.